and welcome to the Rainbow Umbrella, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything under the rainbow. And today I'm here with Bonnie. A mutual friend recommended we get together to talk about Bonnie and her, so far that I've heard, fascinating life and journey to all things that she enjoys. So I'm really excited to delve into that more. Welcome, Bonnie. It's amazing to have you here today.
Hi there, good to be here.
Yes, this is so exciting. So first of all, let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us about you and, your life.
Yeah, I suppose first and foremost, I am Nelsonian born and bred. Mm-hmm. I've lived in Nelson, I think, all the way up until maybe 19. So shout out to all my Nelson friends. I used to go to Garran College, which is a Catholic school. Mm-hmm. Then you have me, who is very gay. I'm pretty sure I was the only openly gay person in my school, at least that I knew of.
Yeah.
But I also didn't really have to come out. I think everyone just kind of assumed after a while.
Okay.
So it was quite funny because I have actually been approached outside school many, many years down the track that people have said that I have been their gay awakening. So that's super cool. I didn't know this stuff while it was happening. Who really does? Yeah. But yeah, I suppose it was really funny back in Nelson because I was known. I didn't know this. It was a friend of a friend that told me. But you know how you're trying to distinguish if you know the same person. So they're like, oh, do you know Bonnie? And it's like, Bonnie? Oh, Bonnie with the big hair. That was me.
Bonnie with the big hair.
Bonnie with the big hair.
We just got the episode title right there.
Oh, man, I know that this is all audio, but for example, I showed you this, didn't I?
I think you did, yeah.
Yeah, so my ID is basically hairspray. If you're thinking about
stunning.
the emo scene, emo scene sort of hair with the really thick up here and then like shredded to bits down here, that was me for like 7 years.
Stunning. I love everything about that. That's beautiful.
But I suppose, other than that, me being a Nelsonian born and bred, everyone kind of goes, oh, Dunedin, are you studying, is the first thing I normally get. And it's like, no, I'm working. It's like, oh, how did you end up in Dunedin? It's like, I fell in love and did the lesbian thing and travelled the whole South Island. So, that's how I ended up in Dunedin. I've been in Dunedin for, I want to say, 5 or more years. Mm-hmm. I got my 7-year anniversary coming up with my now fiancé.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. In August 17th.
Cool.
So
how
that's
exciting.
Really
Well,
cool.
funnily enough, it's August 15th when this comes out.
And I literally only just told Charlotte, my partner, about this yesterday afternoon.
Amazing.
Oh, by the way, I'm doing a podcast tomorrow. I don't think I told you.
Well, happy anniversary, Charlotte.
Yes.
That's so cool. Very cool.
I love you.
How sweet.
Might as well get that out there.
Yeah, how sweet. So what was it like growing up in Nelson?
Yeah, Nelson was pretty cool. The only thing about it is, along the lines of diversity, there isn't much. Mm-hmm. It is very much the retirement home of New Zealand.
Okay.
Me and my friends managed to have fun.
Yeah.
But I think it's really changed and evolved now. So my parents and my family still live in Nelson, and I always try to get up there at least once or twice a year. Mm-hmm. But they've for years and years when I was there, they're just like, we're going to get a movie theatre, and we're going to put it in the mall, and it never happened.
Oh, wow.
But when I moved away, they made a whole new subdivision of really fancy houses, a new cinema called Silky Otter, not even State Cinema 6, not even Readings, Silky Otter, and it's almost like a bougie upper class cooked food sort of thing.
Wow.
My family is there all the time. Silky Otter sponsor my family.
I've never been to Nelson myself, so I'm going to go to Silky Otter because that sounds amazing. So what's the biggest difference you notice between Nelson and Dunedin?
Nelson is flat.
Yeah.
I know where I was living in Nelson, which was, I think, Richmond at the time, there was a point kind of like along the highway, if you got high enough, that you could literally see the Richmond Mall.
Right.
Everything, I reckon, was in walking distance if you were lucky enough to either be in Richmond or Stoke even. Yeah, you could probably walk to most places. But here in Dunedin, it's definitely Wellington's little cousin.
Yeah.
It's got the slopes, it's got like the traffic annoying, like trying to find parking and things like that. But it's quieter in a sense, and you don't really have to deal with the winds of Wellington. So I suppose, if anything, you really do feel the studentville of Dunedin.
Yeah.
I suppose that would be the main difference between Dunedin and Nelson.
Yeah. Oh, very good. So you do a lot of interesting things with your life. One of those is weightlifting. So let's talk about that.
Yes, so as of right now, I'm doing like Olympic weightlifting, and I'm doing a little bit of hybrid of bodybuilding because I'm getting a little bit vain and want to be a muscle mummy. So essentially what happened was, it has to be maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, I made the New Year's resolution, and I basically said today is the day, that this year is when I'm going to go to the gym. So I was like, I'm going to do that like New Year's resolution, book myself into a gym for 12 months. I had no plan. I knew nothing other than I was going to do that. So that's what I did. I got a 12-month membership at a gym, and I started working out 3 times a week. No idea what I was doing. I was kind of just showing up and doing bits and pieces. But very gradually, I did actually get bored. It was actually kind of funny because this particular gym kind of quit me. They kind of just like... I didn't quit the gym. They were just like, hey, we're closing down. So here's like all the money we would have owed you, or like we stop your membership. And I was just like, wow, like I was like so at it. The gym quit me. It wasn't me quitting the gym. But knowing that I was going to get bored and I was kind of like in a routine, I was like, I need something to put in place. Otherwise, I'm literally going to do nothing. So I kind of like pondered on it, and I was just like, okay, what do I like about the gym? And this was a very minuscule list at this time because I didn't like exercising whatsoever. But I'm just like, okay, if I had to do something, what would it be? And I was like, well, lifting the weights, the strength-based stuff, I would like to continue. And with me personally, I've had some difficult relationships with food. My family are huge foodies as well. Like, I don't think I ever really was or learnt like a correct portion. I didn't know what it looked like.
Okay.
You know, there was like the whole hand is meat and hand with fingers is like salad and stuff like that. But like, I don't know, that didn't seem to like fit into a normal day for me. So I just kind of just ate whatever I wanted when I wanted. So with that in mind, I kind of thought with my exercise journey, I'm going to have to make it so I'm not going to just be reliant on checking the scales. I didn't want it to be something that I had to keep looking at the numbers, and then the numbers was going to influence how I felt about my progress. So I was like, if we aim for strength, I'm hoping just the fitness and the weight loss and all that kind of stuff will kind of just naturally come with it. But, you know, I got to start somewhere. That ended up being the best way for me, at least, because I feel like if I had taken the diet route first, that may have given me too much control over the situation, where I would have been more reliant at looking at the scales and going and trying to compare. But because I cemented the exercise portion first, it was kind of like I got the discipline of the routine and cementing it in, but then I was kind of like free to think about anything I wanted. I could have a Big Mac, for example, and not feel guilty because I know I'm going to the gym at the end of the day. And that's how it kind of just, it kind of rolled out for a while. I was just doing my own thing, but I was, quite heavily involved in really working the weights 3 times a week. It really just got to the point where I was kind of like, I'm getting stronger. Like, I am getting stronger. I can see the progression, But as of right now in the women's class, I'm in 87 kgs plus, which means I could rock up to weigh-ins eating a burger or, there didn't seem like to be much of a tangible goal. I could have kind of continued that trajectory with just working away, getting strength with that the only goal in mind. But as I started doing it, my focus kind of changed, and I'm like, I do want to build a health component into this. So that's when I decided, look, I do want to look at the diet side of things, but if I was to lose any weight, my overall goal would be to gain it back, but in a leaner form. So it got to the point that numbers, they were important, but I didn't really care if they climbed in a healthy way, for example. So I suppose that's where I sit at the moment in regards to my fitness journey.
And how does that interact now with your relationship with food? Because you mentioned before, it's like, I could have a Big Mac and not feel guilty because I'm going to go to the gym after. Do you still have that mindset? It's like, hey, I can treat myself, but because I know I'm going to work it off later. Yeah.
Well, now I'd just say it's more educational based. So it used to be like, I have a Big Mac and, I'll work some of that off with a workout and kind of, but not really know the fundamentals of what a Big Mac actually entailed. But now it's kind of like, I definitely want to go get KFC or something. Okay, if I do that, then let's aim for a brunch. Have KFC, go for a walk with the dogs. And then think about choosing healthier snacks along the way. So if I'm going to have KFC, probably should have a light tuna wrap for dinner or something along those lines. So it's not really saying, no, you can't have any of the great stuff. It's kind of sure, you can have the great stuff, but then you're going to have to mix it up with something healthy or something along those lines. So discipline to an extent, but not to the point of just ruling out every single delicious fatty food there is.
So it's about finding that balance as opposed to being, strictly I've had this, so I must do this.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of my goal. I didn't want to be a gym rabbit all the time, eating lettuce, feeling pretty cruddy about my life in general. I kind of wanted to feel fit and healthy and still be able to have the occasional burger, Indian, pad thai. Like I said, I really like food. And I cook. So that makes it a little bit easier in regards to meal prepping and stuff. Being the house cook, I love cooking so much. I love baking so much. That might be the Filipino culture in me. But it's been a little bit easier knowing my way around the kitchen instead of relying on, I don't know, food bags and things like that to try and get my goals and bits and pieces. But no, just determination and my Fitness Pal app to count calories is essentially what I've been doing.
Amazing. Now, how do you find navigating the gym space as a queer person?
This is a good question. So, no issues in regards to my local club. So Otago Weightlifting is where I do my weightlifting, and they're a really open space. I've never felt looked at in the wrong way or anything. Everyone there is really friendly and really opening. The cool thing about that space is there's no mirrors as well. So
cool.
Weightlifting probably not being the most attractive sports anyway. I have a few South Island pictures of me having grunting faces and scrunching and stuff like that. Not having mirrors in the gym really helps because you're not looking at yourself and going, oh man, I look weird when I do this. You're kind of just doing it. In that particular gym as well, it's very normal for people to set up their phones in the corner to check their form and stuff like that. And there's this whole sort of respect around if you see someone preparing for a lift, you don't just walk in front of them. You stop and you wait for them to finish their lift and then you continue on. And that was cemented into me day dot.
Yeah.
So the community know that like if someone's lifting, you don't just like walk in front of them. So you take that into a commercial gym setting and that just doesn't exist. People like walk in front of you, they walk in front of your video, they don't put away weights, that sort of stuff. The local gym that I've been going to in Moscow, which is the Olympic gym, which is, I find it quite funny. It's called the Olympic gym, but it doesn't actually have that much sort of tailorage towards like Olympic weightlifting.
Okay.
But it does what it needs to do. I've definitely had a good time going there, just it being more localized and it cuts down on my travel time. But I could see how the commercial gyms could definitely push queer folk away, just because it can be quite intimidating. You've got people who are probably brimmed to the gills with pre-workout. You have people, guzzling down creatine and their protein shakes, and they look like athletes. Yeah, this will be probably the biggest comparison is in a commercial gym, people look like they live, breathe, the gym. Gym life, do you even lift, bro? That sort of mentality.
Yeah.
But my like little community weightlifting club, nothing like that.
Okay.
Those people, like you could walk, if you saw those same people out in the open, they look like average Joes. You wouldn't think that they were like actual athletes who can throw however many kgs over their head. Most of them just look like your average people. There's a couple of really lean ones who are absolute boss, absolute tank, all respect to them whatsoever. But it's nice, I think, to have a gym that has a more community feel with people at all different ranges, different ages, different diversities, all of that coming together to solely just do a sport. So I definitely do recommend a more localized like community gym over a commercial gym. But if you need to know where to start, commercial gym's always the way to go. I think the best advice from me is no one is looking at you. It feels like it. I was talking to my partner earlier and basically said I kind of feel like I belong at the gym now because I know what I'm doing. I got my routine sorted. I know what I'm doing for the day. But I can definitely understand someone coming in there, beginner, doesn't even know which way to sit on the machine, probably thinks everyone's staring at them. But to be honest, everyone is probably all self-conscious. They're all trying to muscle up before the summer and things like that. So, I think fitness journey is different for everyone. It starts at any time. I'd like to say that now I'd probably know how to do it the right way. There was a lot of teething issues and me kind of just researching and stuff like that. But I feel a little bit more savvy now. Which makes me feel hopeful that, hopefully the aspiring muscle mummy bod will be achievable sometime soon. But, I suppose trust the process. Just keep going, trust the process, turn up, do the stuff, and then, just carry on with the rest of your day. Easier said than done, but...
Now, you've also recently just competed in weightlifting.
Yes.
So how did that go?
Yeah, so as part of the whole weightlifting sort of era that I'm still in, competitions are definitely something that happens alongside that as well. And these are the questions I had very early on as well. So there was a competition coming up and a lot of people, they were coming to me and they're like, look, get your first competition out of the way. Even if you don't want to do competitions, just get your first one out of the way. And I didn't really know what they meant by that. So I asked my coach at the time and I was like, what do I need to do to prepare for a competition? And he was like, nothing. And I'm like, what do you mean nothing? Like, do I need to lift a certain amount? Should I be changing my diet? And he's like, no, you just show up and you do what you think that you can do confidently and then that's about it. And I'm just like, but how do you win and stuff? And he's like, oh, well, you compete in your weight categories, but you're really just against yourself. And the first time I heard that, I was just like, oh, sweet. So a competition where you're kind of just versing yourself doesn't sound that demanding. That sounds like kind of cruisy. If anything, it's kind of like a formalized personal best, essentially. And the way that kind of cemented itself in my brain, I was just like, yeah, no, I'll do that. So I signed up for my first competition, which was just an in-house. So it was just like within the club. There was nothing special, no third parties. Everyone was just, competing to see what their personal best will be, maybe trying to make rank for nationals or South Islands or something like that. But that's where it really started. So I did my first one and the nerves were crazy. Like, I was really nervous. Later on, you kind of learn how to channel that nervousness into the adrenaline, which really helps. But the first competition I have, it was very much nerve. But the adrenaline hit is so real. It's so much fun. After a couple of in-house competitions, I decided to do my first South Islands because Dunedin was actually hosting it. So I'm like, home turf, might as well do weightlifting here. It makes sense. And I got second in my weight class for the first South Island Championships that I did, and that was when I was in the 87 plus category. I don't remember what my total was. It must have been like, I want to say like a 55 kg snatch and a maybe 69 clean and jerk possibly. But yeah, that was big for me because it was my first South Island Championships. I knew kind of like where I was at, and then I got second for my weight class, which was astonishing for me. So by the time the next year rolled around, South Island Championships 2024 was hosted in Nelson, which is my hometown. I'm just like, I got to go to this one too. Yeah. But I suppose the main difference between those two was I was on my sort of diet era. So I was pre-calorie deficit. So calorie deficit was basically I was eating about 120 calories with the thought to lose body fat. So I actually dropped a weight class down. So instead of 87 plus, I think I was sitting at under 81. So going into the South Island Championships, I didn't know how that dramatic of a weight loss was going to affect my placings. It was actually the best thing I could have done because the 87 plus category, I think, had like 5 women in it. And they were strong competitors. I was actually kind of scared. So then when I found out like, actually, I'm not in 87 plus anymore. I'm in like under 81. There was only one other person in my weight category. Oh, wow. So I'm just like, okay, so best of luck, I get gold, but otherwise I get second again, which isn't, as long as I actually like get the lifts, otherwise no medal whatsoever. So it did turn out good for me. So I got first in my weight class for that. And yeah, just the whole experience of just not really knowing where I was going to come, totally knowing that I changed my weight category was a good thing because I kind of went in there less stressed. I was kind of like, I couldn't even guess how this is going to turn out, so I might as well just be in it and see what happens. Yeah. It being in Nelson, I was able to invite my grandma, my younger brother, my older brother. Sadly, my mum and my dad went to go visit my grandma on my dad's side during the same time. It just collided. But because it was live streamed, they were able to, have a look in the action and all that as well. But something about competitions, they're just, the vibes are so cool. Yes, there's a little bit of nerves, there's a little bit of angst, there's a bit of like fighting with your own psyche, but for the most part, if you ever just YouTube and you look up weightlifting videos, they kind of have to go to a special place before they lift, because it is very psyche demanding. If you walk up there and you kind of like set up to do a lift and the first thought in your head is like, oh man, this is a bit heavy, or I haven't done this one before, or anything along those lines that will slightly overshadow it, you won't make the lift. So earlier on, I used to not even look at the amount that's on the bar. I would have just, in my head, I would envision like someone moving flats, and they're just like, oh, hey, can you help us move this?
Yeah.
like, hey, sorry, it's a big ask, but like, could you just move this a couple of centimeters for us? Like, we're trying to move houses or something like that. All in my brain, by the way. Don't know if that's ADHD or what that is, or just a creative sort of imagination. But yeah, just imagine someone going, hey, can you move this for me? Because if I was thinking about that, and not the weight and not the people looking at me and anything else, then I was more likely to succeed the lift because I was just like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll just move this for you. Yeah. So that's kind of what I do. I know that there's heaps of different athletes and weightlifters that will do different things. Someone at my gym was saying that, like, with some of the bosses, like big bros on the Olympics right now, for example, like, when they miss a lift, they're almost in like total disbelief. They're like, what? Like, how did that happen? Like, the judges obviously called this wrong, but it's because they build up their psyches to be so positive that it is kind of like when they get the red lights, they're like, oh, what happened? Like, I'm sure I had that. But yeah, it's kind of what you have to do. You have to kind of believe that you can do it before you've actually done it, but that's just all part of the thought process. Yeah.
I really love that. Believe you can do it before you've done it.
Yeah. Really, like, that's definitely a easier said than done scenario, but sometimes I suppose especially with Olympic weightlifting, it's the sports of milliseconds. And even with the South Island Championships, even though like, for example, when my second lift came about, the clean and jerk, I wanted to go out at like a 68 or something like that. And I've done 68 kgs so many times before, I could totally do it. But my coach was like, hey, you might want to drop that down. I'm like, no, I'm like super confident at 68. And he's just like, yeah, that's okay. But like, these judges are like really eyeballing people's elbows right now. So if you don't lock it out, it won't matter if you get the bar above your head, it's not going to pass. And I pondered on that, and I saw all these other people who were getting like axed because of their lifts, and I'm like, actually, yeah, no, that's a good proposition. So we actually dropped it, and I got it, which secured the gold medal. But I failed every lift after that. So if he hadn't have given that key advice at that point in time, I wouldn't have made podium.
Wow. And I mean, that just goes to show, like, obviously I don't know anything about weightlifting, but it's more than just being able to lift a certain amount of weight. You know, it's so much more nuanced than that.
The technique, because at the start, I didn't even know what Olympic weightlifting was. I was just like, I want to do more weightlifting. So I literally just Googled weightlifting, and this is kind of where I ended up. So it wasn't until a little bit later that I'm just like, oh, this is Olympic-styled weightlifting. This is the style in which they do at the Olympics. Every time I say to people that I do Olympic weightlifting, their jaws drop and they think that I'm an Olympian. And I'm just like, I wish, but no. It's Olympic-styled weightlifting, and it is very technique orientated. I was talking to my coach, and we were talking about the differences between weightlifting and powerlifting. I don't know how many enemies I'm going to make, but from what I've been told, powerlifting is basically like a grunt. I lift heavy, you know, like really like that's it. Like that's the mentality. You get it from the ground, you get it up, that pure power of it. Olympic weightlifting is more technical in the sense that they're like, wow, did you hear about this thing called gravity? Let's use that to improve our lifts. And that's kind of it. So they use essentially the help of gravity and different movements of your body to make like these short distances from like the floor to like your shoulders, for example, and then from your shoulders up into the air. So it does. I would say that strength would only get you so far in Olympic weightlifting because it does kind of enter that territory of science, gravity, and all those really big terms. And but yeah, no, it's such a cool sport. I would have never ever, stumbled upon this just because I had never heard of it. High school, it's not like an extracurricular activity or anything like that. Stumbling upon the sport was just by chance, and it just happened that it's something that I enjoyed enough to continue doing. So I think it's like 3 years now that I've been doing Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah, cool. Well, congratulations on the gold medal. That's so awesome.
Thank you.
That's very cool. Now, I want to change tack a little bit here. So you mentioned that, when you were growing up, it was probably quite obvious that you were a queer person.
Yeah.
And also you mentioned Filipino heritage.
Yeah.
So how do those two intersect?
Oh, wow. It's interesting because I suppose in the early stages, I kind of thought of the Philippines as quite queer affirming. There are transgendered people in the Philippines. There are what they call tomboys, which essentially was the title I was probably slapped with, probably still to this point actually, a tomboy, which was essentially just a female that showed male-like characteristics. I wouldn't even say physically. I would say they just enjoyed playing with boys' toys or something like that. And that's kind of what got you the title of a tomboy. But it was kind of like, it was something that was that is out there. I know of a transgendered family member on my mum's side, for example. I hear stories about a woman on our side ending up with women after marriages and stuff like that. So I think it's definitely around. I personally haven't received any negative feedback from the Filipino community in general. But I would say just with culture, religion, and those sorts of mixes of things that, I've definitely been affected to a degree in regards to being a queer person in those sorts of spaces. But as for the Filipino community, I would say one of their biggest core values is family. And if family is their core value at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It might take some time for them to adjust and, get over their own little culture shock coming into New Zealand and stuff like that. But for the most part, if the family value is present, then most of the time, anyone within that sort of queer or rainbow space are usually, I would say, quite safe is my understanding. Communication, I'd say, is just the biggest barrier. I think only just because I'm studying a diploma in business with a project management strand at the moment, they were diving into sort of that cultural aspect of, I've forgotten what it's called, but there's a more collective approach. So the Philippines, I would say it's very collective. You do stuff for the family, with the family, with the family in mind. And then in New Zealand, or at least some of the other westernized sort of cultures, it is very individualism. You come into the world, you get your own job, you do this. But essentially for the most part, anything you do kind of just comes back on you as the individual. But in places like the Philippines or with that sort of Asian culture, I know that there's probably heaps of cultures that have that sort of collective mind frame. But being torn between those sort of two spaces of, really, it's something I'm still, I suppose, developing with my sort of journey of learning and things like that. But it is very, very interesting. I'd say myself experience culture shock going to school, for example, because when I went to school, I'd hang out with my brothers and I'd have kids on the playground come up to me and they'll be like, oh, ew, why are you hanging out with your brothers? And I'm just like, what do you mean? They're like my friends. We hang out all the time. And they're just like, oh, I hate my siblings, or my brother annoys me, or something like that. And it's like, I would never be caught hanging out with my brothers. And I'm just like, what? What is this? So it was such a weird thing. I'm just like, my siblings were essentially my first friends. So yeah, it was a weird thing to kind of wrap my head around. So as I was kind of brought up, there was all these little things that kind of popped up along the way, school, friendships, relationships, where they didn't quite match up. And I was kind of like, well, what's happening here? It wasn't until I was a little bit older I was able to kind of like jigsaw puzzle it together and go, this is because this is the environment in which I was brought up in, and this is the environment that I'm in now. So even that component was really hard to kind of like, for example, explain to my mum, was like, I'm a tree that's been rerouted into a totally different forest. And then she's just like, yeah, but the forest, is like right here. Like it's a very, very hard concept to kind of to unpick. But I suppose anyone I think who has that sort of mixed race is probably like nodding their head and like, I understand that, even though I probably butchered the description of that. But I think returning to your question, like how is that in regards to, being queer or identifying as queer? The Filipino community aspect is very loving, is very open, is very family orientated. Religion kind of gets mixed in there sometimes, which can kind of influence it bits and pieces. I'd say that in my high school years, I probably had a bit of turbulence with my parents just because they just didn't understand. It was a total new concept. It wasn't until I was a little bit older and not living in the house that I was kind of able to unpack how I was feeling around it. I was able to have more open conversations with my parents about it, which made it a lot easier. But that all took time. It took a really long time. And maybe one of the times where I thought that it wouldn't quite heal to the place that it is now. But as of right now, I suppose I'm one of the lucky ones. My parents love my current partner. But yeah, it's definitely been interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, if you combine that with growing up in Nelson as well, because Nelson, I mean, as you said, compared to Dunedin is quite small.
Yes.
How did those three things interact?
Yeah. Well, I was lucky that I had, I was very confident, maybe like bordering cocky.
Okay.
In high school. And I don't know if that's a star sign thing. I'm a Libra, by the way. Or just how I was brought up. But for example, like the prime example of like, if you're being bullied and the advice that your parents give you, the advice my mum gave me was essentially, stand up for yourself. And if they're bigger than you, use a weapon. So like, bear in mind, my mum's the Filipino, so like in her Asian accent, she's like, if they're bigger than you, grab a chair or something like that. And then she's like, and when I get called into the principal's office, I'm going to act really mad at you, but I'm actually not going to care because you stood up for yourself. So I kind of thought that me having that as a tool was enough. So when people tried to bully me or like get on my nerves or something like that, in my head I kind of had like this little switch where I was just like, oh, you have no idea, I'm unhinged. My mum gave me permission to beat people with chairs. Like, you don't know what you've gotten yourself into. So that alone kind of gave me the confidence to maybe not be seen as like an easy pick. People who tried to kind of bully me, I kind of thought that I thought maybe I was like bordering a bully on myself, but the thing is I kind of bullied the bullies. So there were a couple of people in my high school who were just I want to say trash, but no, that's not the case. Everyone has different like learning backgrounds, and everyone's just trying to make their way through life. I didn't know their stories, but they were just your typical disruptions in the class, trying to be funny, trying to be clowns and stuff like that. There was this one guy who like stole a ball from us in PE, and he wouldn't give it back. And we're just like, man, we can't finish our game. And and I tried to rip the ball off him, and he was like shouting out like dumb Eric Cartman sort of stuff, right?
Okay.
And like, get away from me and stuff like that. And I yanked the ball away from him, and we continued playing. And then at lunchtime, I like hunted him down, and
Okay.
and I was just like, hey, I just want to talk to you. But you could tell like I was fuming, and this guy was actually scared. And I actually think that he wasn't actually like a bully or anything. He was just one of those guys who thought that he was like super funny and didn't know he crossed any lines, essentially.
Yeah. And also probably didn't expect you to actually do anything about it.
Well, no one had ever done it. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's kind of like, oh, that's how he is. He's just a tool.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know, just having this sort of like my mum talking in the back of my
Yeah.
head. I was just like, now's my chance.
Yeah.
Now's my chance. So we won't go into too much detail, but there was a little bit of conflict there. But because I was a girl, nothing physical happened to me. I was called into the principal's office. But it was kind of shrugged off because they kind of knew that this guy was like just a notorious person around the school. Okay. So they were kind of like the deputy principal kind of said to me, like, if my daughter was in your situation, I would want them to do the same thing. So it was like they were trying to punish me, but like this guy was kind of like unhinged as well. So they're kind of like, he needed someone to kind of stick up. So it was a weird sort of situation. I don't know if that kind of just played on the gender roles. If it was flipped, it probably would have been a totally different case. But that guy never annoyed me again. He never annoyed anyone in my my friendship group anymore. And I thought it was great. But then it kind of like painted me in a picture that I didn't really want. So people kind of did have this kind of fear about me. I probably didn't help because like I didn't do the uniform code very well, and you know, with the emo scene haircut and stuff like that. I did probably have that a little bit of a vibe around me. I was a softie at heart, but like that's how people saw me for a little bit. They're just like, oh man, but like Bonnie's kind of like badass. Like we got to kind of be careful because like we don't even know what that other guy did, or like I don't know. There was like all those rumors and stuff like that.
I mean, you get that at high school, right?
Yeah. So I kind of had this like rep of like, kind of like that confidence level and stuff like that. So people kind of thought I was like impenetrable or something like that. But really it was just all a facade.
It's just the confidence your mum gave you. It's like, don't hit someone with a chair, but act like you can.
Exactly. And it kind of just changed my whole sort of course. So when the gay factor sort of came out and things like that, I already built this sort of reputation that people didn't like my close friends would rip on me and make jokes and stuff like that, but anyone else like didn't really know where they stood with me. And for me, I suppose being quite a sensitive, empathic person, I didn't like it. I was just like, oh man, I've changed like the course of like my personality, or at least how people were perceiving me. How am I supposed to like help people and give them feedback and advice and stuff if they can't even approach me? So I kind of had to flip the script a little bit there. I think there was maybe like a little bit of like anger, residual anger or something there that I kind of like switched and put on the inside. And that was the whole switch of that, was to essentially be more welcoming and opening to people that didn't know me. I didn't want to be scary or unapproachable and stuff like that. But in doing that and flipping that sort of anger and then like putting it deep inside me, it did turn into some sort of, some mental health sort of stuff where essentially I was repressing emotions and stuff like that. So I suppose my whole sort of high school journey with those key sort of things that had happened, there was probably like a huge shift in the way that at least I was being perceived. So yeah, all my friends or people that knew me back in Garran, yeah, there was like this era that I was like badass. I had the leather studs, I had all this sort of stuff. But yeah, no, it was all just a facade. It was nowhere near who I was actually on the inside. But I do feel like high school's like that, very chameleon-like, very adapting. But yeah, there's a little bit of a snippet of my high school experience.
Wow. I wonder if it was a subconscious kind of like self-preservation defense mechanism sort of thing. Because I feel like, a few people will go through the like tough guy sort of phase. Yeah, some of us never grow out of our goth phase. But I think everyone will try and have maybe a tough guy phase, particularly at those difficult high school years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you add in the extra layer of navigating, figuring out who you are as a person, potentially coming out to your friends and whānau, like all of that sort of thing. It just adds layer and layer of complexity to it.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, it sounds like you've had a very interesting journey. I get the sense that we could talk about this for a lot longer.
Yeah.
But we might put a pin in it now, and maybe we could even do a part 2, because I don't think your story's done. There is so much more to you, Bonnie, and I'm looking forward to finding out some more. Yeah,
next episode, all my near-death experiences.
Oh, well, I sense a series in the works, Bonnie. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today, and I look forward to continuing the kōrero in the future.
Thank you.
The Rainbow Umbrella is kindly sponsored by the Aurora Cafe in Mosgiel. The Rainbow Umbrella theme song is by Paul S. Allen and Beth. Check them out on Spotify. New episodes of The Rainbow Umbrella are available every 4th Thursday on Otago Access Radio 105.4 FM on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to get your podcasts. Do you have an idea for an episode or something you would like to kōrero about? Get in touch at rainbowumbrellapod@gmail.com.